Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
I can't hear that well. Okay, who is this?
Who do you think it is?
Well, it's not Jay-Z, because it's, oh my God, who am I going to see this week? Oh my gosh, I'm having a brain freeze. Will you help me out?
Kanye West.
Oh, thank you, Kanye. Kanye. See that giant, what did I say? Just before we went on the air, I said, I'm terrible with names. So what am I doing? I'm misidentifying my guest, my musical guest today. Sorry about that, Kanye. Anyway, thanks for playing that, Kurt.
No problem.
I've asked him every week. Oh my
you okay there?
No, all of a sudden I swallowed something that's floating around in the air.
A fuzz.
Is this how this show's going to start today, or should we just start over? Hang on, everybody.
I hope not.
I've never done that before. All the years I've anchored and done a show and done all kinds of things, I have never choked on something that was flying through the air. Tony, you need to take care of this. So let's start over. Thank you, everyone, for being here for another fun edition of What's Up with Kobylt and Friends. I sincerely have something that I swallowed that was roaming around through the air. I don't know what it is, so if I'm choking throughout the show, you'll understand. Thanks for being with me and putting up with this. What do you have to say, Kurt? Are you laughing at me again?
I'll give you the Heimlich if anything goes wrong.
No, it's like it just got in there as soon as we started the show. So sorry about that, everybody. In studio with me today is Dale Raoul. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Famed actress. I love having her on. But today we're going to be talking to her about a little bit of her background and how she got into acting. She's going to be featured on Bones coming up shortly, among other things. And she's also going to chime in a little bit with our guest who's on the phone right now. Lynne, are you there?
I'm here.
Lynne Lyman, thank you for being here with us. You are this is a big deal, a little close to my heart here. I've been reading a lot about it, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. You are the California director for the Drug Policy Alliance, sorry about that. And you are one of the people who is behind Prop 64 here in California, correct?
Yes, we are. Thank you for having me on today. Very important election coming up.
Oh my gosh. Everyone needs to get out and vote for whatever it is that they believe in, certainly for president, all of the local offices. And here out in California, we've got lots of props. One of them is Prop 64. That's the legalization of pot. And if I can read it a little bit, it would... The initiative would allow Californians to possess, transport, and use up to an ounce of marijuana for recreational purposes, and it would allow people to grow as many as 6 plants in their house, right, as long as it's not, seen publicly. So what does that mean? It can't be seen in the yard, can't be seen on, in the front window? What does
patio.
this mean? What's public?
Well, that's a little complicated, but
the whole thing is complicated,
yes.
Actually.
So there's we have 20 years of different marijuana reform laws in California that make up sort of the status quo. So it is very complicated, but in California, any patient who's a medical marijuana patient can still grow cannabis at home and as much as they need for whatever condition they have. So just to be clear, Prop 64 deals with the recreational use or the adult use of marijuana. It does not deal with the medicinal use of marijuana.
Right, and the medicinal use of marijuana has been around in this state for almost 2 decades. Isn't that correct?
It is, but the state never regulated it. So while we legalized medical marijuana, we never created a system for, distribution. Until a couple of months ago. Well, actually, almost a year ago.
It's been almost 2 years, actually. Almost 2 years that it's been regulated, right?
The governor signed a law last October that went into effect in January to regulate medical marijuana, but they haven't gone into licensing yet. That will happen in 2018 at the same time that the recreational licensing will begin. So the two systems will dovetail and begin licensing in 2018.
Essentially, why are we doing this? Why are you in favor of legalizing pot for recreational use for adults?
Well, in general, I don't think that, marijuana, it's a plant and it's not a harmful one and it should not be criminalized. So the fact that we're even here having to undo that is a problem. But let me talk about why I'm supporting Prop 64 specifically, and not just supporting it. I am so excited about Prop 64. It is a long and complex initiative, but it does a lot of really great things. So you mentioned that it legalizes the personal use, which is correct, and that's certain amounts. It also fully legalizes hemp. So it takes hemp out of the cannabis code, puts it in with the regular agricultural code products. It establishes a commercial system, as I just mentioned. It is a taxation and revenue allocation measure that's going to raise critical funding for all kinds of important things, which I can get into. And then finally, most importantly to me, it is a broad decriminalization and sentencing reform measure that is going to keep tens of thousands of people from being arrested, going to keep children from ever being arrested for marijuana in California again, going to allow people who are carrying marijuana felonies and misdemeanors on their records to have those records cleared and for the first time get their full citizenship rights back, which is something you lose once you have a felony on your record.
Essentially, I read that by 2020, the revenue that could be generated from this is about, how much? About $6.5 billion for the state. Is that correct?
Well, those numbers are about sort of the profit that the industry will raise, but the revenue itself from the taxation is estimated to be $1 billion a year in California once we're fully implemented. So I think that will probably be around 2020. And that billion, none of it's going to the general fund. The initiative earmarks it for different purposes, all very critical things that we need to do.
What are they? Can you list off a couple of them?
Yes, absolutely. One of the ones I'm most excited about is a $50 million annual community reinvestment fund. This is money that is going to go back to those communities that have been most damaged by the war on drugs. So communities with high arrest rates, incarceration rates, poverty, etc. And that could be used for reentry services, legal services, all kinds of programs. It could be used for educational opportunities, for economic development, etc.
And this money, that money generated that you're talking about very specifically, that would come from the tax revenue that is drawn from purchasing this. Is that correct?
That is correct. There's a 15% excise tax that will be placed on recreational marijuana once the licensing begins in 2018.
But explain that to me. That's if you go in and buy it somewhere, or because if you're growing
That's right.
it.
So just like anything else, you'll go into a store, and you can already do this if you're a medical patient in some jurisdictions. But you'll go in, you'll pay 2 taxes at the minimum. Everybody pays sales tax, so we'll pay whatever the sales tax is in your jurisdiction. It runs from 8 to 10% across the state. So you'll pay your sales tax, and then you'll pay an additional 15% excise tax, like a business tax. And that is the money we're talking about that will go to the marijuana tax fund. And some of the other things it's going to fund is, importantly, environmental remediation and the restoration due to the damage from illegal marijuana grows to our watersheds. The grows have been in public parks, on private lands, etc. So a lot of cleanup that needs to be done there. And then the biggest portion of the funding goes to youth drug treatment, prevention, and education. And education and prevention that is evidence-based. So things like DARE will not be able to be funded, but things like after-school programming will be fully eligible to be funded under Prop 64 because the research tells us that the best way to keep young people from developing problematic drug use is to have them involved in after-school programs, extracurricular activities. So we're going to get a huge influx of money to serve those who do need drug treatment, and I'm not talking about marijuana treatment. I'm talking about alcohol, prescription drugs, illicit drugs, everything.
Okay, a couple things. Tax money, tax revenue. I'm always suspect when I hear the word tax. I'm one of those people, and here's why. I've always thought that we need a forensic tax audit of everything. So let's say you're taxing 15% on this stuff, right? And 10% sales tax. There you go, 25%. Where exactly is that money going? Is it going toward administrative costs? And then in which case maybe kids, for example, who need these after-school programs are getting, 5% of all that money? Or is a lot of that money really going toward where it's needed? I have a real issue and stuff.
Let's break those
let's break it down a little bit.
Numbers up because they're really so different. Everybody in California pays sales tax on everything they buy. There are certain exemptions.
Right.
The sales tax is dealt with through a separate system, and I am not an expert on how the sales tax is spent. So
Oops, am I losing her? Was it my question?
The 15. Can you hear me still?
Now I can. I don't know what happened to you, but that's okay.
I don't know what happened. I could hear you. So what I said is the sales tax is a completely separate issue, and all Californians pay sales tax on almost everything we purchase.
Right. So no, take that off the table. But the 15%.
Take that off the table because that's not my expertise. So
okay.
the 15% excise tax is going into the marijuana tax fund, and then through Prop 64, we have divided up all of that money into very specific buckets. It will be up to the Department of Finance to allocate that money into each bucket. And then it will be up to the legislature and us as citizens, concerned citizens, to make sure the money gets where it's designated. So
that's important.
We wrote into the law where it should go, but we all know that often, our state government finds a way to disappear the money. So we fully plan to watchdog those funds and make sure the environmental money gets there, the public health money gets where it's going, the community reinvestment money gets where it's going. We also fund lots of research through this, and so we got to make sure the research money gets there. So it's not like things are done once you vote yes.
No, they're not.
Implementation of any law is where most of the hard work happens, right? Because you have to make sure that all of these pieces are actually carried out in the way we intended through the measure.
It really is. And you said watchdog. I think that's really important because with every prop and with, there's a little tax on this and a tax on that. And we're so taxed. And we know, but we just need to make sure because the programs that you're talking about are good and they're important. And there does need to be a proper watchdog group or groups to make sure that that money being raised goes to where it's supposed to go. And another issue as well, what about how do you test for this stuff? Like when you're driving down the street, there's a breathalyzer and all that stuff.
Well,
if you've been drinking, what about for pot? Because they don't have one that's good enough yet.
I was reading though that there's not much. I mean, the driving under the influence of pot is pretty minimal, actually. Correct, Lynn?
Yeah, because that swab doesn't seem to
work. That's correct.
Yeah.
There is no scientific standard to measure, THC in the blood and impairment. So what we did, instead of coming up with some kind of junk science, some per se model like they did in Washington State, we instead put money into researching this very topic. So $3 million a year will go to the California Highway Patrol to fund the research of how to test for driving under the influence. Because of federal prohibition, no research has been, not no research, but no sort of peer-reviewed research really exists in this arena. And so we have to start funding it in California until the feds get their act together and we can get it funded federally.
But isn't this...
So we're
I see what you're saying, too, because, no one's really been able to look into it. So how could they come up with a test if it hasn't even been legalized?
Right.
But what about in states where it has been legal? I mean, how are they dealing with it? Like in Colorado and in Washington, right? How are they dealing with
There's a lot
this?
of mixed reviews coming out of those states. There's studies on all sides. But what the marijuana czar in Colorado will tell you, he's the sort of the government bureaucrat responsible for implementing their marijuana law. He will tell you that it's inconclusive and they still don't know. There are folks who are saying, well, more people are testing positive for THC after a crash. And that might be true. The issue is we weren't testing people for THC a few years ago. So you don't know whether it's more people, compared to last year or more people because you never tested it 2 years ago. So a lot of it's just hard to see the trend.
It is, but I have to tell you, that's one issue that I have. That's a real problem. I mean, have you smoked pot?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Smoked pot that you'll admit to?
I use cannabis every day.
How about you? Do you use it, obviously? You said you do every day?
I'm a medical marijuana patient. I use cannabis every day.
Okay, I smoked it a little bit in high school. It just wasn't my thing. And no, really. And I'll tell you why it wasn't my thing. And I don't care who smokes it and who doesn't, because it made me just sort of hallucinate. And who knows what it was cut with or laced with. But I remember just sort of, just floating around the few times that I did do it. Well, so no. But that's a concern of mine. Like if somebody,
it is. But let me also just speak to and we're not doing a science show, I know, but so that your listeners understand, marijuana cannabis, THC, these things work really differently in the body than other drugs. So the difference for an experienced consumer versus someone who's a daily consumer, you have drastically different effects on how the cannabis will affect you. So, a lot of things that happen to what we'll call novice consumers, things like hallucinations or dizziness or paranoia, or even sleepiness, those don't happen to people who use cannabis every day. So it is a very unique psychoactive substance that interacts with your body based on set and setting. Like, did you eat that day? Where were you? Were you in a comfortable place? Who was the person giving it?
Hold on a minute.
So
all right.
All of those things affect it.
I mean, you know a lot about it. You're somebody who uses it every day. But so how about the recreational pot user, just like the recreational, the person who has...
They should not be getting in their car driving, not now, not after November 8th. Nobody should get in their car and drive after they've taken a psychoactive substance that impairs them, period. That's the law.
Okay, but people do that, and they do that all the time when they have a drink. So my issue is, I sometimes wonder if this is the cart before the horse. I don't have a problem with people smoking it. I really don't. I don't necessarily have a problem with the taxation of it, as long as the money is going toward the right programs and not a pile of administrative costs. That's something that really pisses me off. But I am concerned. I've got kids, and you may as well too.
I'm a mother of a 13-year-old, and what worries me much more than my child accessing marijuana, although she's not going to do that.
I'm not worried about the access
like
of
alcohol, I don't allow her. What worries me is police coming into contact with her if she were engaging in marijuana activity. So Prop 64 inoculates children against the criminal justice system. Marijuana arrests continue to be the number one way that we pump children into the, people often call it the school to prison pipeline. We're using marijuana to get our kids caught into the criminal justice system.
I wasn't referring...
For me, that is by far the priority. The second issue is that the cart before the horse, that is something that you can only say if you don't have anybody in your immediate circle who has been arrested, incarcerated for marijuana. We arrested 500,000 Californians for marijuana in the last 10 years. Even though we have medical and we have decrim and we have this and we have that, 500,000 Americans, mainly Latino and African American young men, even though white people use and sell marijuana at higher rates. This is a racial justice issue. This is a civil rights issue. We can't wait till we have all the T's and the I's crossed. Marijuana is safer by far than alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, sugar, etc. So we need to just hurry up and regulate it, put money into research so we can resolve those real issues that need to be resolved. But we can't wait. I can't have another 20,000 people be arrested next year.
Let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there. But I have to tell you something. If this isn't regulated and you've got people out there stoned driving and then running into someone, that to me is a problem. And so it's not like one is better than the other. No, people shouldn't be arrested necessarily unless they're causing a problem. But what about I know plenty of people who smoke pot all the time. I was just at a party, I don't know, the other night, and half the people were just passing around a joint. And I really did have an issue, not with them smoking, but that they're going to get in their cars. And that is a problem for me. That just is.
It's the same problem with prescription drugs, with
Sure.
alcohol. People need to not do that no matter what kind of psychoactive substance you are consuming. So marijuana shouldn't be in a special bucket that's illegal when you're allowing people to use Ambien and all kinds of other serious prescription drugs.
But there's not a prop about Ambien. We're talking about
because
marijuana.
Ambien's legal. That's the thing.
But
We're
do you
saying
think
marijuana should be legal.
Is there going to be a big jump in people smoking pot after this proposition passes?
That hasn't happened in any of the other states.
I don't think that it necessarily would. I mean, I think people who smoke pot are going to continue to smoke pot. I don't think people are going to go, oh my God, it's legal. I'm going to go out and get loaded and drive my car.
I think more people will sort of have their 6 little plants in the backyard and grow it and roll it up and just maybe have a joint after dinner. I do, because it's easier. It's accessible, and they don't have to worry about, somebody coming over and seeing it in the yard and policing them, if you will. I just think it'll be easier. Again, I don't have a moral issue with it at all. I'm really concerned about regulating the safety of it. I know you can't go out and smoke a joint and get behind the car, but people do it. I just wish that they had something in place where they can test you should you get stopped.
They will.
I hope so.
I think
this is my big issue.
What about didn't I read something about cafes, that they're going to be some sort of
like they have in Amsterdam.
Pot smoking.
Oh my God,
is that so?
Yeah, right.
So,
pot smoking cafes.
Yeah, let me speak to that. So Prop 64 allows for on-site consumption, which it can come in the form of a cafe if the city opts in. So it's not automatic. Each city, town, county has to affirmatively decide they want to allow on-site consumption. Once they do that, then of course they get to decide, what that looks like, how many cafes or cigar lounges type things, like all of that will be decided by local governments.
Wow, imagine walking past that on the sidewalk. You open the door, it's like, whoa! I actually think it's kind of funny. They've had that in Amsterdam forever, and it works fine. I remember going to that not a couple times actually. I thought it was amusing.
I also wanted to just back to, are people going to use more once it's legalized? So what's interesting, what we're seeing is that the only demographic that seems to increase use, of course we only have a couple of years to look at, is senior citizens.
I was just going to say, older people, they're like, hey, this is cool. We can smoke pot now. Go on a date, smoke a little pot in the backyard or the living room, and I get it. So where do you think this is going to go? From what I've been reading,
it's going to pass.
It's going to pass.
I'm not taking anything for granted. We're 6 days out. We're working around the clock. But we are hopeful. We feel good about the polling, the public support, etc. So as long as nothing crazy happens in the next 6 days, we should be victorious on the 8th. And what happens on the 8th at midnight, if we win, the law takes effect.
Everybody's going to be smoking a joint is what they're going to do.
No, because
I'm
you
just
still
kidding.
cannot consume in public. Public consumption is not allowable, again, ever, and on site, so in a specific space would have to be licensed, and none of the licensing begins till 2018. So the
there are measures. Yeah, there are measures put in place to make sure that when they roll this thing out, it's not just at midnight. I was just joking for a minute, but so in that way, I think that's very positive. And is it possible that by 2018 we'll have a test by then, right? To test when people are pulled over, to see if they're under the influence of too much pot. I don't know, what would that be called? Under the influence of
DUI.
We call it DUID, driving under the influence of drugs. That's what the California Highway Patrol calls the issue.
Mm-hmm. We have a Jay-Z video. Should we play that, or we don't really need to do that? Because I know that you've got...
Oh, it's a great video, and it's broader than marijuana. It talks about the war on drugs altogether. And it's really a great visual.
Why don't we play that for a second? Okay, let's play it.
In 1986, when I was coming of age, Ronald Reagan doubled down on the war on drugs that had been started by Richard Nixon in 1971. Drugs were bad, fried your brain, and drug dealers were monsters. The sole reason neighborhoods and major cities were failing. No one wanted to talk about Reaganomics and the ending of social safety nets, the defunding of schools and the loss of jobs in cities across America. Young men like me who hustled became the sole villain, and drug addicts lacked moral fortitude. The war on drugs exploded the U.S. prison population, disproportionately locking away black and Latinos. Our prison population grew more than 900%. When the war on drugs began in 1971, our prison population was 200,000. Today it is over 2 million. The war on drugs is an epic fail.
That's very interesting. He doesn't mention anything about Prop 64,
right?
But obviously, he's in favor of Prop 64 based on that video there. I actually found that to be. I thought has that been very effective?
The video's great, and in the end of the video, it does show. It says Proposition 64.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. But he doesn't refer to it.
Incredibly helpful because everybody's watching it, and so it's gotten the highest number of views of any of the other videos that we have on Prop 64. It's been so helpful. We have Artists for 64, which a whole bunch of artists that came out under that banner maybe a week or two ago, which includes Olivia Wilde, Tim Robbins, Russell Simmons, Common, Danny Glover, Pusha T. So a whole bunch of artists have, since Jay-Z was the first kind of come out publicly in support, and that led to lots of other artists and celebrities joining our campaign.
Who could stand, we're going to have to let you go in a minute because we're going to be doing an interview with Dale next, but who stands to gain the most financially from this, other than, tax money then being turned over to, programs in the state, but
well, financially, it's an industry, and so capitalism will have its way, and I think some of the The cannabis professionals will make money, a lot of it, and others will probably be competed out of the market. So it is going to be interesting. We did write provisions into this measure to give a head start to small farmers. So the large cultivation licenses will be banned in the first 5 years. And then we might extend that ban if we decide we want to keep it sort of a small farmer model like the winery model. So those are decisions we'll be able to make, through the legislature, through our regular political process as time goes on.
Would you buy it, sort of raw and then roll it up yourself, or would it come in cigarette packs? I mean, I know you're only...
All of the above. So right now in the medical dispensaries, if you haven't been to one, you can get pre-rolled joints, you can get just the straight leaf, you can get it in a wax, you can get it in an oil, you can get it in an edible, in some kind of candy, and there's lots of different ways to consume it. So smoking is only one way of consuming cannabis.
Oh, very interesting. I haven't been to one of those. Have you, Dale?
No, I never have. I mean, I live in Eagle Rock, California. They're absolutely
They're everywhere over there.
But have you gone into one?
I've never been in one.
I what kind of rock have I, and I don't even have an issue with this stuff, so I don't care. I've just never gone into one, and I really should.
Well, you have to have a recommendation to get into one. You have to have a doctor's recommendation.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't just walk in and say, "Hey, I'm just kind of want to check it out." You can't do that either. I mean,
I guess you can
as a
go.
media person, somebody could schedule a visit for you, but yeah.
Okay, how much does an ounce of pot go for right now on the street? If I were to run off and buy one on the street corner, Dale, you want to do that? How much would that go for right now? And how much would an ounce now that it's going to be legalized? Will it be cheaper?
An ounce is a lot. Not a lot of people buy that. So most people buy in eighths, an eighth of an ounce, and that runs from $40 to $60 for an eighth. And I think it will be about the same after we go recreational.
Okay, that's interesting. What do you mean that's a lot? That's a
lot of money. I mean, of course, I'm looking back at my college days, which was a long time ago.
Well, let me say this. For me, I'm a daily consumer, and I might buy 1 to 2 eighths a month. So for me, the total cost is less than $100.
Well, that's true. That's not bad.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. You'd have to use a lot to,
Yeah.
And how long does it take to grow? People can have 6 plants, right, at home. Isn't that what I read? You're allowed to have
up to 6 plants, and they can ban. And you opened with some stuff about out of sight and all of that. That's only if your locality wants to add on those extra regulations. The one thing your locality can't do is put an outright ban on indoor home grow. They can say no outdoor home grow. They can say no home grow that's visible from the street, but they cannot say that you cannot. So every Californian adult will have the constitutional right to grow 6 plants at home.
And really quickly, you've got to be an adult to even get your hands on this stuff. At least 21
years
and
over.
of age. Right, 21 years of age. Lynne, thanks for being with us. I really appreciate it. Lynne Lyman. Anything else really quickly you want to say before we let you go?
I would love to just encourage people to go to legalizeca2016.com. We have fact sheets on all the issues there.
And learn more. It's very comprehensive. It was written very well, I will say. Yeah. And it was easy to it was. And it was easy to I know you had a huge hand in that. And it was easy to understand because some of these props have become so difficult to understand. I have to read them 1, 2, and 3 times to figure out which way I want to go. But this is well thought out and it was well done. And I really appreciate you coming on and explaining it to us. So thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me, Deborah.
Okay,
bye-bye.
Thanks. Have a good one. Bye-bye. So, you're going to run out and, put some plants at the house?
No, I don't think so. Actually, my neighbor has got that handled already, but I shouldn't.
Do you smell it, like coming over from the...
No. Oh, well, sometimes, actually, yeah. But no,
I think I'm more of a nerd. I don't know. That kind of stuff, I just don't do it. I don't know.
It makes me sleepy nowadays. And
so does wine make me sleepy.
Yeah,
I mean, look, I'm high energy enough. So people always say, they're like, oh, why don't you have some wine and relax? But if I have just a little bit of wine,
You're out.
It puts me down. Pot, I remember just a few times I did it in high school. I hated it because I just felt like, the room was spinning. And but I'm sure, who knows what they put in that stuff,
Yeah.
They probably laced it with all kinds of stuff, so I'm imagining if it's just straight up pot that it just relaxes you.
I don't think you're going to be running out on November 9th.
No, but I told you my main concern really is regulating it in terms of people smoking or whatever, eating it and driving. So
Right.
I'd like to see in the future, what they're going to do about that. But thanks for sort of chiming in with that. I mean,
Well, it's an interesting, you can see both sides of all these propositions, but this one I think has a very good chance of passing.
have you been keeping track? I mean, as we were walking in here today, we were talking about the election, the presidential election. There's so many props here in California, it gets a little confusing. And this week, I'm going to focus on each one.
Yeah,
of them.
Ray, my husband and I have already voted. We
you did?
We vote absentee. So we went through the booklets and went on the websites and kind of bashed through them. So we hope we've made the right decisions.
How did you vote on 64 on this one?
I voted yes.
You voted for it.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still not sure how I'm going to vote for it.
Well, I just
And
like the idea of the extra revenue, and of course, as you say, it needs to be regulated properly and usefully. But I mean, it could be very helpful.
It does. For example, though, I have an issue with taxes not because of paying them necessarily, but because sometimes the layers of administrative costs
Sure.
are so deep that the people that really need it at the very bottom, they end up getting 5%, 4%, 6% of all that money.
Right.
And you're paying so much administrative costs. And that's why I would like to have everything to be accounted for properly before I'm just continue to give away my money.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so let's get to you right now.
Oh, my
you
gosh.
just came off an incredible play, correct?
Well,
you did that a couple months back, right?
I think it was in September, so it's been, 6 weeks, something like that. What happened was I was asked to do this a 10-minute play as part of something called the Short and Sweet Playwrights Festival.
But how fascinating! And how many plays?
There were 65 plays, I think, and they were performed over the course of 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And this festival started apparently in Australia and has been done and produced all over the world. And this was the first time it was done in Los Angeles. So I thought, well, it would be good to do this play. I like the director. And what happened was it was a 2-character piece, a husband and wife, and they were having trouble finding a man to play my husband that they liked. And so finally I said, well,
what about my guy?
I said, I have a husband and he's kind of a ham. And my husband Ray is a lighting designer, but he does have a degree in acting and has done a little bit over the years.
Hang on, an 8-time Emmy-winning lighting designer.
Yes, thank you,
Go
Deborah,
on.
Thank you.
Well, because that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is, and he works hard, God knows.
He does.
So Ray said, well, I'll audition. So they auditioned him and he got the part. So
pays to know people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know. I think he was nervous because it had been a while. So so we did this festival and our show won the best production and we've been invited to Australia.
Oh, you have been invited to do the play.
We have, but they're getting sponsorship from the airlines, from Qantas. So we'll see when that comes through. Then we'll talk.
And the play is called, or was called The Reservations.
It's called Reservations, and it's kind of it's a drama with some comedy in it. And it's about the story of this couple that's been married a long time. It's a very charming little piece.
And he has a secret, right?
He
does. He wants to tell.
He wants to tell his wife, and he has reservations about it. So he wants to make reservations at their favorite restaurant to tell her this news that he has. And we had a really lovely time doing it, and we just found out they're going to film it, so that will be nice too. So Ray's excited about that. He's his return to the boards.
Will it also be a 10-minute short? Is that what it's going to be?
I think it will be.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
how nice.
Exactly.
And will it be a collection of different shorts, the same way that's
I
how they did
that.
the play?
I don't know that, actually.
Are you doing the film?
I am. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That I didn't know. I wasn't sure if you were were on or you were. Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah. So we'll
I think
enjoy
that's
that.
big news. Any idea who's on the film or?
Our director Todd Felderstein is also going to direct the film. Yeah.
Oh,
so he's a great guy, and has a lot of experience with behind the camera. So we're in good hands.
From what I understand, and again, I'm sorry I missed this one, but your performance was so genuine and so real that the people in the audience were just crying.
Oh,
you had them.
Yeah,
and
it's a moving piece, and Ray and I worked really well together. We did, we rehearsed quite a bit, and that was kind of tricky with his schedule because he's at CBS over here in Los Angeles at Farmers Market for usually about 15 hours a day. So we had to squeak in time. But
Can't
we
you
had
do
a
it at the
great time.
breakfast table or something like
Well,
that? No,
our-
I'm just kidding. I know there's plenty of blocking and all kinds of stuff that goes into this. I know it's
Yeah.
10 minutes or an hour and a half
Yeah,
or 3
exactly.
hours. There's a lot of work that goes
Yeah.
into this, even if it appears simple, it's not.
Right. Right.
And next up, have been working. You're coming up on a series, Bones. You just did Bones. I didn't even know
doing
that.
An
I just found
episode
out.
of Bones.
You've done everything. You're always everywhere.
Well, this is the 12th season of Bones.
Yeah.
And I think probably have auditioned for it every season. I don't know if that's the truth, but it seems like the very nice casting director has brought me in finally in their last season.
It's like, Dale, we've got to get her
finally.
in.
Well,
she's perfect for this. What do you play?
I play a witness to the crime, or not. Well, I'm not going to say, but I play a witness who has information about the bad guy, and
A snitch?
Yeah, well, I'm not a snitch, but I have definite opinions about this guy, and I help to get him.
You helped take him down.
Yeah, so that's good.
Did
But
he
it was
just-
really fun.
And he really was a bad guy, or
bad
or is
guy.
there a turn here where?
He's a bad guy.
Okay.
He's bad.
So that must have been exciting. To
it was
do
very
Bones,
fun,
especially after
very
going back
fun.
season after season.
Yeah, exactly.
And you get the call. It's like you got it.
Finally. So, yeah, it was really fun, and we shot in Malibu at a big, beautiful house.
Oh.
And because the show's been on so long, they are really a well-oiled machine.
Mm-hmm.
They start work at a reasonable hour. They finish at a reasonable hour. There's not an enormous amount of overtime. There's not too much suffering.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, Deborah, sometimes, on television shows, people were working so hard, they're just dragging themselves through the day.
And you were just saying your husband sometimes puts in
Well,
15-hour days. It can
he
be,
does,
especially a job like that.
yeah.
An actor and actress can come in and go out, sort of.
Right.
But
sort
the
of,
lighting
yeah.
guy, especially
They're
him,
there.
they're there.
Yeah. So yeah, Ray works on Young and the Restless, and they put in very long hours because they shoot maybe 80 pages a day, which is incredibly fast. A regular episodic probably shoots 6 to 7 to 8 pages a day. And so a soap just goes on, just shoots it. They just let her rip.
How do they
and
do
go.
that?
Well, they shoot with 5 or 6 cameras. So they get every angle, on one take. They don't have to reset, too much.
Yeah, that's laborious, I have to say.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, stop. We have to get it from this angle, and you think,
Right.
Okay, your hand has to stay in this position. If it's over, I'm one of those people. I will watch and I'll notice if the hand was from there and then it's over here. I'm like, they didn't cut it right.
Yeah, and that's
I'm one of those.
that's the script supervisor's fault. I mean, they'll
right.
come out and say, "Oh no, you set the magazine down with your left hand this time. You did it originally with your right." So stuff like that we don't think about.
So, and they don't do that in a soap. They just go straight through.
They go pretty much straight through.
Easy.
So it's fast.
So you did Bones. When will that be? Do you know when we can see you on Bones?
I don't know. I think probably not until after the first of the year. Yeah.
I find you fascinating because...
Oh, my God.
Well, no, I do. Because you do theater and your heart is in theater.
Yeah.
You're on the board of...
The Skylight Theater in Los Angeles, which is over in the Los Feliz area. And we are considered, one of the best intimate theater companies, which means 99 seats or less. And what makes us special is that we really only produce new work. So we have, playwrights, workshops and classes, and lots of readings. And then maybe 4 or 5 shows are selected a year to be fully produced.
And
so it's
are
cool.
they well-known people, or sometimes we could take on a new person?
Oh,
and a new person's work.
It depends. It completely depends. Most of the time, I would say the playwrights are not necessarily young, but are not incredibly well known because, of course, those playwrights can go to more to larger theaters and make more money. Mm-hmm. But these guys are, boy, I tell you, we've got a show there now that's a combination. That's a script that's been woven together about the Kennedy assassination with Julius Caesar. So it's sort of like,
That's interesting.
It's a really fascinating. It's called The Tragedy of JFK as told through the eyes of Julius Caesar or something like that.
Oh, that's fascinating. When will that be?
It's on
running
now, and I think it's running for another 3 or 4 weeks. And it's a super show. You know, it's about J. Edgar Hoover and Lyndon Johnson, and you know, it's a really fascinating look at the assassination.
And you're going to be working on a fundraiser there at the theater coming up.
Yeah.
And you're also going to be doing a Christmas show there that you do every year.
Yes. Actually, we're not doing it at the Skylight. You're
not? Okay.
Several of us for years have done a stage reading every Christmas of Truman Capote's short story called A Christmas Memory. And
Where are you doing that out of?
We're doing it downtown at the Huffington Center for an organization called Housing Works, which is an organization that helps the homeless and provides housing. And we've done it for them for probably about 15 years. So it's very, it's an hour long. It's a very, very fun event. We're also doing it this year for a stroke association. And
So you take this play on the road.
We have, yeah.
It's not really in a theater.
No.
You take it on the road, and
we don't
just
need
people
anything
set up
but
chairs,
and that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's really a good thing, and we always love doing it, and we've raised lots and lots of money, which makes you feel good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
again, talking about your whole body of work, whether it's theater or television, and you've done film. Mm-hmm. You grew up in, we were talking yesterday,
Missoula, Montana.
And I was telling you that when I was one of my first TV jobs, I had to be the weather girl, the sports girl, the news girl, the anchor woman, the camera woman, and just about all of it. And I remember when I had to read the weather, I'd say, and in Missoula, and I'm thinking, who would live in Missoula? And I would sometimes just make it up, saying it's 15 degrees below, thinking it's always 15 degrees below there.
Yes.
So when you told me that, I just started laughing, because that's
Your
as close
knowledge.
as I've ever been
Exactly.
to Missoula. So a girl from Missoula who then came out to Los Angeles with your first husband. Not Ray, somebody else.
Not Ray, somebody else.
Okay, that's okay.
Very nice man, but
very
not
nice
Ray.
man, but that's
Yeah.
okay. Not right. You went to number 2. A lot of people are doing that. But it got you out here, and you studied here. You studied
Yes.
acting, and
Yes.
and that's something you always wanted to
always
do.
did,
Are there a
and-
lot of actors that come out of Missoula?
Well, we do have a very famous one now named J.K. Simmons, who won the Academy Award
That's
last year
right.
for Whiplash. So he went to the University of Montana, and he's a total Missoula boy, and he goes back there a lot and does a
gives
lot
back.
of charity. He does,
Because
yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of kids who have the dream of being an actor,
Sure.
but maybe it's not necessarily there in the community or even encouraged as much.
Yeah, well, nowadays, they have a good theater department, and they actually have Montana has an equity, a professional
know
rep
that.
company, and so things have changed a lot. But I think my mother took me to see a community theater production when I was maybe 8, and I just
And
thought,
you were hooked.
I thought it was so thrilling. And so then I just, did plays in high school like everybody, and did all that. But
But I mean, coming from a place like that, a town like that, it's almost like a dream, because it's not like it's in your
Yeah.
backyard. Is what I was
No.
saying.
No.
From Missoula, you think, gosh, how can I get there?
Yeah, I had no idea.
I
No
remember
idea.
being in New Jersey and thinking, how can I get there over the river in New York?
Exactly.
Even that seemed hard
Exactly.
enough. So I just always admire people's stories when they had a dream. A little
Yeah.
8-year-old girl who saw some theater and then
Right. And
came
it
out
just-
here and made it happen.
I guess so. I mean, I just always loved it, and I loved the family aspect of it, and the fact that you're telling a story to people. I think that's very exciting, and I just always wanted to do it. I was telling you yesterday, my grandfather was a state politician, and so I think I saw him as would get up and make, campaign speeches and things.
He was Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah.
a big deal.
Well, yes. I mean, in Montana, certainly, especially.
Sure, and when you're watching,
and I just
watching
thought
him-
we would drive around and he would, shake hands and visit people in the grocery stores and the whatever. And so I think he was kind of a showman. And so I thought that was cool. And of course, he thought I should have been just a teacher, because going to Hollywood was way out of anyone's realm of understanding at that point.
Oh, I get it. I'm surprised that they didn't try and push you to get into politics.
Well, my grandfather was a Republican, and I turned out not to be one, and that was a terrible disappointment.
Oh my gosh! So you end up in Hollywood, and you're not a Republican.
Yeah.
Dale, heaven forbid. But you
Yeah.
know they're proud of you now back home, right?
Yeah, it's nice. So I feel happy, and I'm fortunate to be married to somebody who's also in the business, so who understands it. You know.
Oh yeah. Do you ever go back home? I mean, do
I
you have
do.
relatives that are still there? and
Actually,
even doing community theater there, that would be fun. I would think.
We actually have a house there.
Okay.
And so we go, especially at the holidays, we'll go, and then we go 3 or 4 times a year. And
That's nice. It's beautiful country.
It's beautiful. If you saw that movie, A River Runs Through It, that's
have.
Missoula.
Yeah.
So it's a great place. As I always say, it's a great place to be from.
But also, probably growing up there, and you said you got inspired by going to theater as a kid. You probably have the freedom to sort of be who you are and just have the time, a little more time. I'm raising 3 kids here in Los Angeles, and they don't quite have a lot of that time. And my big push is slow it down. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing. Just try and slow it down a little and figure out what it is that you like.
Well, and also, as you know, I mean, just the push about getting into, high schools, special grade schools, special high schools, college. Kids today are really, really stressed.
And I've seen it. I've been up front with it, and had kids that have had to apply to schools, and that's a whole different conversation.
Right,
And you're right about
right.
that. I have to tell you, no one's ever really looking at who their kid may or may not be yet, because so many of those schools are just wrong for those kids. Maybe
Right.
one is just too academic when the kid is really, a theater kid or performer, and I just find that sometimes parents are pushing them in the wrong direction when they should be trying to help guide them over here.
Right, and I'm sure it's about trying to do the right thing by the child, but I don't know. Growing up somewhere like I did, there was certainly none of that pressure, and in a way, in a place like Montana, especially, when I go back and I see friends who are musicians or artists who don't have the pressures that we have in the arts in a major city. They really can make a living, and they can do it for reasons.
Organic reasons, because they love it.
Because they love it, and they don't have the pressure to succeed that we do.
But they look at you, who sort of who came out here and made it, and you have a very relaxed attitude about your acting. That's another thing.
Well,
when I ask you, are you going to be going to Australia with it? You're very relaxed about it.
Well, at
what
this
comes,
point.
your craft. No,
Yeah,
but seriously, if you
yeah.
know it and it comes to you, so how do you keep that attitude in a town where everyone is just running around stressed?
Well, I mean, I've gotten older a bit, and that helps because you have a better perspective. And also, I'm a character person, so I have not had to worry about getting old. So I have so many girlfriends who were leading ladies or ingenues and now are 60 or 50. And that's a terrible struggle, because they are not in their category anymore, and there's not very much work for them. And, being an older character person, a woman, we are our category kind of works less than anybody, but at least
You're working.
We're working, so that's good.
And
but
you
it's
can
a
keep
tough
going.
thing.
So, I guess it's always tough, isn't it? If you're like
Yeah.
the young beauty queen, there's lots of them too.
There's lots of them,
right? And then
yeah.
as you age out of that stuff,
Then what?
then
Yeah.
what? But
Yeah.
you say you're a character person, character
Yeah.
actor. There will at least always be
Sure.
work for you.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you have the kind of attitude you do and the talent you do.
Well, thank you, but I think with experience comes wisdom, somewhat. Sometimes any of us certainly goes through
So much.
highs and lows, and if you spent more time in Los Angeles, particularly, as you get very tired of driving around.
That's
You
true.
know,
So
going
what-
to
so what,
places.
now you're only taking parts where you can walk or ride your bicycle. It's like, I just took the metro for the first time.
Oh, good.
From the west side of LA downtown to the football stadium.
Yes.
Oh my God, the USC football, the best time. It was so great. And being from
bet.
New York and New Jersey, I was
Yeah.
saying, oh, this is great. You know, that one little train, it just goes from
Right there.
one side
Yeah.
straight to the other. And I
That's
just
great.
felt like I was a New Yorker all over again. It just really felt terrific.
Yeah.
You know, we just need a few more of them.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. It's taking a long time.
Yeah,
Whew.
it is. But
What's your favorite thing that you've ever done? Do you have one or two that you could throw out there
well,
for me?
I think my favorite TV job was probably True Blood. Yeah.
You were amazing on that.
Thank you. It was so much fun. I mean,
Every time I think of you on True Blood.
The show ran for 7 seasons. So the lovely thing was getting to know the people, and it had a wonderful family feeling, and it was a hit, which is lovely because that doesn't happen too often. And Alan Ball was the creator of the show, and
He's
he's
such a
so
talent.
amazing that
Generous
and smart, and creative, but also ran a very tight ship, and that nobody was allowed to act up, and so everyone behaved and was incredibly profestional. And I just
it was such a talented cast.
Yeah,
I mean, you
really
were all
was.
just probably had such deep respect for one another.
Yeah.
Are you still in touch with them because they become family?
Yeah, I mean,
you see these people,
and also because of Twitter and Facebook and everything, people are always in touch. So it's really, really nice. And but I really had a good time on that because I had such a fun character.
Yeah.
And that was a high point. Yeah.
And do you think, Bones, will this episode be airing, you think, before the end of the year? Or we're
I
not
know. I
sure.
think it'll be after the first of the year.
Oh, really?
Because I think it was number 7, episode 7 in the season. I think that's correct. So that might be a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll look for it. Will you
Okay,
come
good.
back?
Yes, of course I will.
I love having you in.
You're so
because
wonderful. Thank you.
So are you. You're relaxing. You actually come in here. You know your stuff. You did more research than I did on
No,
Prop 64
you
practically.
had
no, I know. But I'm just saying. You know your stuff. You come in here. You know it. You're just sort of fun to talk to. I love to hear about what you're working on, especially the theater, because I shared with you that my
Yes.
family background
Yes.
in Tamara. We always pronounce it differently.
Yeah, I
here
think
in Los Angeles and in LA, and that's the play where you would follow the characters from room to room, which is really fun. I would go so many times because I'd follow different people
characters.
all the time. Yeah, and I'd always want to trip them up and see if if they. Yeah, that's me, right?
I just remember going to that show and watching the character I followed. She had to go in the kitchen and cook eggs. Do you remember that? I was like, oh my God, look at that.
There were so many. What a
Yeah.
cool concept. So at any given time, you've got characters in the bedroom,
Right.
you've got characters in the bathroom, you've got characters in the kitchen. Cool. So that's sort of my family background, and then in theater, and my parents would always work behind the scenes, whether it was, helping with the tickets or whatever. But I grew up in a theater family in that way, very different than you did. But
it's of a whole. You can't do. You have to
No
have
doubt.
all the parts.
no
Yeah,
doubt. You
exactly.
do. You do. Somebody's got to be there and do the little bit of work in the back. And so
Sure.
I love it. It's my heart's in it. I love it. And I like hearing about what you're doing. So thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here. Thanks for talking about pot. Everybody be careful if you're going out and
Yeah.
smoking a joint today. Just be really careful with it, and make sure that you really brush up on all the different propositions out there. Really think about this election. It's important because next time we're back, next week, we're going to have a new president of the United States.
Oh my God.
I know. Could you imagine? I'm
No.
saying that. Next week, I think we will have a new president of the United States. So we'll see you next week with the new president. See you then. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.